Well, here we are. My name's Tom Osman, and this is Whatever Comes Next. It's the podcast where I explore the world of underground and independent music making. And on today's episode, I'm talking with Nick Sakes of punk rock three-piece Upright Forms, who a couple of months ago, 3 months ago, in fact, I think, put out their debut record, Blurred Wires, on the great SKiN GRAFT Records. I am in the debt of a number of different people to be able to make this podcast happen. And one of the kind of groups of people that I never even really understood existed until a few years ago that have been incredibly kind and incredibly supportive are the PR people, the reps. I feel like I want to name a few of them, but then if I start naming them, then there'll be other ones that I'll forget to mention, and then I'll feel bad for not having mentioned them. But a lot of the episodes of this podcast exist thanks to the coordination of different publicists, and I am very grateful for all of them. But there is another source of episodes of this podcast that I'm also grateful for, and it's more kind of like a grassroots branching out of connections between people. And I absolutely love that, because part of the purpose of this whole podcast, it's a lot of P's there, is to explore the way that these different kind of interconnected DIY communities can sort of sprout up, how people manage to book shows and tours, and how people find the connections to record records, and, all these different things that can happen on a very independent underground level. And so from that point of view, I can think back to the Squid Pisser episode that I did with Tommy Meehan, which itself was thanks to Dan at Discipline PR. From talking to Tommy of Squid Pisser, I ended up talking to Gregory Jacobson of Lovely Little Girls. And it wasn't directly through that, but I kind of ended up tangentially talking with Mark from SKiN GRAFT Records, having done these episodes. And also shout out to Jarrett, connected as we are through the Every Album Ever podcast. And Jarrett was instrumental in getting me, first of all, in touch with Nick and talking directly with Mark for an episode on the Dazzling Killmen that we put together for Every Album Ever with Mike and Alex. And so that is something that I would like to guide people towards if they haven't watched that already, and if you're interested in the music that Nick has been involved with over the years, because both he and Mark were extremely generous with all of the insight and information and great color that they added to that episode, going through as Mike and Alex did, and talking about all the different releases of the band, and getting some of the stories from both Nick and from Mark, I think was really great. And I'm so happy that we got that. And thanks again to Jarrett for making that happen. Having done all of that, and now having a bit of a connection with Mark, the possibility came along to actually talk to Nick on the podcast, which I'm very grateful for. And I was looking forward to very much, because it was really cool to get the insights about Dazzling Killmen, but I really wanted to explore what I think is a little bit less of a told story, which is some of the other musical projects that Nick's had. And I know that he has done a few other interviews in recent months promoting Upright Forms, but I wanted to explore that from my own angle of the way that I like to do things on this podcast. So indeed, this is where we go. We talk about the band, we talk about their album Blurred Wires, which I'm a big fan of. And we talk about some of Nick's history following on from Dazzling Killmen up to the present day. We talk about musical inspirations, we talk about styles. It was really nice to chat with Nick. He's a really great guy, and I'm grateful for the time that he took out from his day job to talk with me. And I think that there's very little more waffling that I need to do before letting you hear from the man himself. You can check out Upright Forms on their website, uprightforms.com, where you get links to all the different social media. You can go to Bandcamp if you'd like to buy the record. You can go to SKiN GRAFT Records if you'd like to buy the record. You can go to Spotify if you'd like to listen to the record. All of these things are within your power, and I would strongly recommend that you do so. And with that, You can follow me on all social media at Tom Osmond Sounds. You can see what I'm doing musically at tomosmondsounds.com. I've got an album coming out, a collaboration with Augurio Drama, which will be coming out on Drama Recorder. There should be a release date for that soon. It's called Real Silence. But you're here for Nick's sakes. So let's get on with that. I'm going to play a track from Blurred Wires at the end of the episode. I'll play a little clip for you just now to give you a little taste. And there's nothing further for me to say except Nick's sakes of Upright Forms. Take it away. A lot of people will be familiar with you for Dazzling Killmen, but I don't really want to talk with you about Dazzling Killmen today because we've talked about Dazzling Killmen before, and for anybody who hasn't watched the Every Album Ever with Mike and Alex episode about Dazzling Killmen, I would recommend that they do so, because we got some great insight from you and from Mark at SKiN GRAFT Records. And so, I'm sure there's other stories we could get into, but I'm interested to get into some of the other stories from your musical history, as well as talking about Upright Forms and talking about Blurred Wires as well. So something I'd like to ask you about, first of all, is, for a lot of people, being in a rock band is kind of like a young person's game. And you, in fact, I think, didn't get into music until your mid-20s. Like, I think you hadn't actually picked up a guitar before, like, the age of 25. Have I got that about right?
26, yeah.
26.
Yeah, I was 26.
And then from that point, you had Dazzling Killmen, you had Colossamite, you had Sicbay, and now you've got Upright Forms. Maybe there have been some other musical projects.
Xaddax was
right.
my ex-wife. Yep.
But thinking back to the Dazzling Killmen days, compared to playing music back then to being in a band now, how does it sort of compare for you?
It's awfully similar. I can't really say that's that much different. In fact, it's all you get together when you can. Usually, we don't practice much. We Upright Forms get together once a week for a couple of hours, and that's it. We do a lot of homework now, like through recording riffs and things on the old voice memo on the iPhone. Whereas that's a big difference. Come to think of it, there's a lot less interpersonal creation going on. Like there's a lot back then, but nowadays it seems like people have the ability, like to record ourselves, versus back then there was a lot of maybe handheld cassette tapes or something, or boombox tapes, but that's a huge difference to be able to put together songs sort of remotely. We're talking remotely. That's changed. I mean, there's a lot of collaboration that goes on remotely. Like I'm doing some vocals with a friend of mine. He writes and records all the music, and kind of says, "What do you think about this song?" And yeah, okay, let me work on it. I've done vocals. I go over to his studio and record the vocals, and then he mixes it and sends me. It's all remote, and that is, I love it. That's great. And yeah, but other than that, you have to get to the gig. You have to book things. Same. I guess that's the one thing I notice is creating is different.
Would you say that any aspects have gotten easier from years of doing this?
I think I think booking tours and booking shows is definitely easier now with, well, the invention of email and a million ways to contact people, maybe too many ways, but that's that's been a huge help. Um, Not that I have to worry a whole lot about that because, like I said, our we're not able to do much touring because we all have jobs and kids and marriages and things like that. But
How close do you all live together?
oh, we live well. Noah, the bass player in Upright Forms, live, I don't know, in kilometers, probably 5 kilometers from each other, and Shaun, the drummer, lives kind of in suburbia. He lives probably 40K from me, but basically, not the same neighborhood, but close enough, within a half an hour drive.
Yeah. You mentioned Noah, your
Hmm.
bass player, and so I feel like for a for a three piece to be successful and to sound good, all three parts have got to be, interconnecting really well. So I think
Hmm.
that is definitely true with upright forms. But I do have to say, and this is going to be good because it's going to mean that I'm not sounding like I'm kissing your arse. I do think that Noah's bass playing particularly stands out on the record. I really like the
Very
sound of his
much.
bass, and I really like a lot of the bass lines as well. I love it when you can hear the interplay between a bass and a guitar, and they're quite distinct from each other.
I love it too. It's so funny you mentioned that. Just today, we were doing our little remote communication via text. I sent Noah a couple of riffs I've been working on, and then, we have to start I kind of was going for, there's always another band I reference, and I was kind of like, a lot of the stuff I'll say, oh, it's kind of got like the Who sound, or I started to think about the Jam, and I just happened to put on Setting Suns just while I was working, and I thought, you know what, the Jam definitely had that lead bass, Bruce Foxton, kind of scrapey guitar with, I mean, it's like they're a trio, we're a trio. I think that sort of lead bass is kind of characteristic of that. I love it. Noah's bass lines are always stick in my head. He's really good at arranging songs and coming up with those catchy bass lines. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
And yeah, something else that stands out for me on the record is that I feel there's like a kind of, to me anyway, it feels like there's like a sense of sort of hopefulness to it. Like if we
Yeah.
went back to some of your earlier music, it's very kind of abrasive and kind of like desperate, like screaming
Hmm.
sounding. And I feel like there's been a progression through your music where it's become
Yeah.
less abrasive, but without it feeling kind
Mm-hmm.
of like sanitized, but just, like maybe a bit warmer, like a bit more inviting. Is that something that you sort of,
Definitely, yeah, yeah. I have to say that's probably due to, I don't know, an evolution of sorts. I'm healthier now. I'm in a better place. I don't know. It took me long enough. I'll be 61 in 3 months. But yeah, I feel like the last few years things have really, you know, kind of flipped for me, and it's it's hard to be. I can still get plenty frustrated and angry about stuff, but I do love. I don't know what I'm trying to say. There's God's even thinking of this word, joy. Oh, dare I use that word? It has entered my life. Yeah, okay. Like I sound like something, one of those little quippy hangings at a beach house or something now. Don't forget joy, Tom. No, I don't
remember to be
know.
grateful
I
every
don't
morning?
know. yeah, that stuff. It's it. I don't know. Things are better, and I guess I'm sort of still exploring that. You never know. I like to pretend when I play music too. I like to be a character.
Yeah.
I think I'm a frustrated actor. I was talking to my girlfriend the other night. Like, dang it, I wish I could have been a character actor. Oh, you would have been a good one. You have all these voices and you can like transform into people and like, yeah, but then you have to hang around with theater people and it's just like that's the catch.
There's always a downside.
Yeah, so I think it's sort of like it it surfaces in the music stuff too for me. A lot of it is just play acting.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's still definitely dissonance, and there's
Hmm.
a lot of the kind of like riffing, I'd say, is kind of, or maybe not riffing, but like the melodies, the lines are often quite angular, and you'll have these. I don't really like the terms math rock and math metal because I feel like
I
that's
don't
really just
either.
a way of saying you've got different time signatures in it.
I don't
Um,
like that at all. Yeah.
but I think there is still that element in the music. It's just it's married to a more, like I
Hmm.
say, kind of like a warmer tone, and I think it's a combination that works really well.
I think that comes from Noah too. Noah and Shaun, their background is a lot more kind of melodic, I guess. They can hear things that I don't hear. Like when I come to practice with a riff, uh, I don't know why, but I tend to have chord changes in very strange spots, and that to me feel really natural. But then I'll play something for them, and they go, "So you're changing on the and of three or the downbeat of two?" Like, I don't know what it is. I just feel like my body's going like this, and my hand's doing something else, and it feels like it flows for me. But yeah, I guess that's mathy, I suppose, because I don't really know. But I don't know. I don't have it well thought out. Like, oh, I'm gonna like change here at on the down of three, and then
Yeah.
do something else. It's never intentional. It's just something that tickles my fancy. It's never well mapped out. I don't have any. I've never taken a guitar lesson, which I have a pretty funny story about that.
I think
But
I've
I've
heard this. You
never.
you nearly
I
had a
it,
guitar lesson with Dwayne Dennison.
yeah, I did. Then I screwed up the time and I didn't show up. And then we both decided I didn't need one. So just keep whatever I was doing was fine. I'm sort of friends with him from way back. And like, yeah, okay. I had my little moment of like, hey, I think I'm gonna take me a guitar lesson at age 60, first one. It'd be a good story. But now he's a bit busy, so he's not doing those anymore for a while.
And this
So,
kind of this sort of tendency that you have to kind of find these interesting kind of rhythmic moments, and as you say, like not particularly planned, but do you feel like that came from any particular musical influences, or has it more been like sort of an intuitive emotional kind of thing?
uh, oh boy, I don't know. Probably stuff like some of the more complex hardcore stuff I would listen to, like Bad Brains and DRI and Black Flag, uh, Accused. I just like all those bands have very abrupt, blunt changes, which I surprises. I love. Yeah, I want to keep it surprising. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's my favorite thing to hear some band that will have just kind of an out of the blue thing happen in the song that you don't really expect. I think that's fun. It's kind of playing around with that. But yeah, I think it's stuff I've liked. Like I was talking about this. I don't know if they were much of a band. They were called Massacre. It was with Fred Frith and Bill Laswell. I can't
All
remember the
right.
drummer's name. Um,
Just before Bill Laswell became a producer.
he might have produced this, but this came out in the late, maybe mid, no, maybe early 80s. But fantastically tight and God forbid I use this term mathy, but it's so melodic at times and will meander off the path into something strange and ethereal and then kind of lead nowhere. I just love that kind of stuff, this unexpected twists and turns.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm always, oh, this band, we're just starting, and I feel like we have a lot to explore. This is our first set of songs, upright forms, that is, and you know, we I don't feel like we've really gotten into it fully yet. Uh, Perhaps we'll practice 2 days a week soon. I don't know. That'll be our big moment. We
When
went
you're
to
ready,
two
when you're
days a
ready for the
week.
next step.
Just take it seriously. Yeah. But I forgot your question. I think it was something like, is it maybe something I hear, but that's why I hear it. I mean, it's no mystery. I mean, I like stuff like old speed metal and Slayer and corrosion of conformity and junk like that, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm no
Go
mystery.
Going back a little bit. So thinking about when Dazzling Killmen split up.
Hmm.
So I understand that for various different reasons, that was like not an easy record to make. I think you had some, you'd lost some people close to you around about that time. It was kind of a tumultuous time, and then the band split up. It seems from the outside like you went into Colossamite quite quickly. And I wonder, because again, looking from the outside, it seems like the band wasn't around for very long. It almost looks a bit like being in a long-term relationship and then breaking up and then quickly getting into another relationship and then that just kind of being like there's still mental
Oh,
trauma
Lordy.
and then you got to get out of it. Was there an element of that? Like, do you feel like you weren't really over Dazzling Killman?
Um, I was over it when it happened, and I said, "That's it. I'm done with this music stuff. I'm done playing in a band." And my then wife, my first future ex-wife, moved to Minneapolis from St. Louis, and I kind of got caught up in the general vibe of this city I live in now, which is really great. It's a great music town. There's a lot going on, and I just got the itch again almost immediately. Yeah, really immediately. And but yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because that's definitely break up, find a replacement quick pattern is unfortunately something I must say has been a bit of an issue in my life in other ways too. But but we won't go into that, Lord God, no. But yeah, it did seem like the end because it was a pretty bitter breakup. We all
Mm.
talk now, but yeah, I put an ad in the paper just looking for people to play, uh, and John Dietrich called and left a message on my answering machine, and John and I and Ed formed Colossamite with Chad, their friend, and later John and Ed they're now in Deerhoof, and and John lives down the street, so we actually are close physically too. We talk a lot. So,
What was that experience like at the time of being in Colossamite? Like, did it feel like something quite different? Because I would say that that music is still quite anxiety inducing um, in style.
well, those three guys and the other three guys in Colossamite had already an instrumental band called the Gorge Trio. So it was a bit like I came along and we sort of glued the bands together. Uh, I came up with a lot of the riffs of those songs, and they would take them and develop them with me. And I don't know. We toured Europe in '98, and Chad, the drummer, stayed in Europe and is still in Europe. He lives in Hamburg to this day. Just like, so we came back and just decided that it wasn't going to work anymore. And I I kind of went the friend route. Like I don't know, like those two bands, Dazzling Killmen and Colossamite, I felt like were I don't know, I felt like a little bit alienated because all the other people in those bands seemed to have an incredible musical like craft ability, schooled. They all went to university. They studied music. I was kind of this outsider guy, that came along that kind of did the dirty work of singing vocals because no one else wanted to. And I don't know. This Sicbay came along, and that I was friends with this guy Dave Erb, and we had a lot in common musically, but it was more kind of like stuff like X or the Weirdos or just more like LA punk kind of stuff, like or undertones, just very sort of punk, regular what you'd call kind of punk rock. And it wasn't
Hmm.
mathy, it wasn't dark and scary and super complex. And I'd like, yeah, you know what? That's really that's what I listen to for the most part. Wouldn't it be fun just to have a band with my friend that we did sort of stuff that was kind of melodic and not dark and scary, and that's what we did. And that vibe kind of carried upright forms too. Um, I don't know, all that complicated, dark and scary stuff I still like, and I'm proud of it, but I don't think it really reflected my personal taste that much. About half and half.
Yeah, it's interesting for you to characterize that progression because that's the impression that I get living to listening to the music is that with Sick there does seem to be a change in tone, like kind of an interest in exploring sort of melodic sensibilities. And you mentioned bands
Definitely.
like the Undertones, and obviously they're very punk, but they're also like they're catchy. There's a poppy element to it
Yeah.
as well. It's kind of like not being afraid of having a pop hook.
Yeah, it's hard to do, but I that's what I listen to. That's what I love. Like I said, I was just listening to the jam today before we talked and thinking, wow, I just love this album, Setting Sun, the song Private Hell. I mean, Private Hell, the song itself is kind of skates the line between sort of scrapey, angular, angry, sentimental almost, it's
Mm.
it's it's a little teary-eyed, I guess. I don't know if you know that song.
Maybe
Just
I'd
sort of
recognize it, but I can't immediately bring it to mind.
I don't know. It's a description of a miserable household, and it's kind of angry and it's kind of sad. That's like, man, that's a great example of kind of what I think is really cool these days. Just having, I like a little bit of melancholy, you know. Even back then, I did like to try to add a little bit of a sadness to stuff. So,
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the time that's got resonance. Like, you talked before about kind of your misgivings of accepting that you feel joy and having
hmm
the joy in the music. And I can understand that because it does feel kind of weird sometimes. Like, how do I represent like happiness in something artistic and not sort of feel embarrassed
hmm
about it? And it
Yeah, it's
definitely
all.
it can be done, but I think with sort of like sadness and poignancy, you can kind of, I feel like anyway, kind of put it into something artistic without feeling maybe quite so awkward about it.
Yeah, I definitely am not what I would call like happy-go-lucky stuff. But yeah, maybe that's kind of the back door to it is go through melancholy to get to express joy. I don't know.
Could be for some
Uh,
kind of
I
redemption.
yeah, it's so bizarre how I am so uncomfortable using the word joy. It just sounds so cheesy to me. But I don't know how else to describe it. I wish there was, I'm just doing a lot better these days, even though I've had some health problems, still feel like
Mm.
I'm doing well. And, I don't know, maybe it's just coming out in the type of music I'm writing or lyrics or things like that.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like, kind of, I was having a conversation with the Every Album Ever guys recently. Actually, we're talking about Nick Cave,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been a huge Nick Cave fan over the years. I don't really
Mm-hmm.
listen to him so much anymore. And we were talking about the most recent album, and a friend of mine is a huge fan of it, and so I've been listening to it a bit, and I like it, but I don't know. It's like makes me feel a bit emotionally uncomfortable. And I don't know
Hmm.
if I just have a problem with like having to, like feel certain types of emotions. I'm like, is this why I listen to so much kind of existentially brutal music? Because it's somehow easier to listen to something horrifying rather than to listen to something that's maybe like a little bit closer to home emotionally. I still haven't quite worked it out.
Well, maybe it's just fun listening to horrifying music. I mean, it's, hey, I do a lot of that myself. I'll throw on a Portal album or something, and or God, I love old Celtic Frost or
Oh
something
yeah,
like that. I don't know,
absolutely.
To Megatherion or something. I don't know. I don't know why I just threw that out there. Or Conate or something. Conate
Oh,
to me is as emotional as it gets, and but they're incredibly sad to me. I mean, they are
oh, it's
just
it's absolute nightmare fuel. It's like,
it's nightmare fuel, and I've had some really dark days, and I found that album like when it found that band, and man, oh man, did it reflect what I was going on, what I was going through when I found it. And it's so funny. Eventually, I met Alan Dubin, and we're friends now. And he's so great and goofy and fun and funny, and has really diverse taste in music. And he's like the most kick-ass guy. And like not. And speaking of acting, I don't think he's definitely not like the character he is when he's the vocalist for Khanate. I don't
yeah.
know, unless he's hiding some part of his personality that I don't think so. I don't know, but yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's an interesting insight. I do wonder about that as well. I think I read some interview with the band and they were talking about I forget which album it was the recording of, but Alan was in a like a little cupboard essentially doing some vocals, and I think he was like screaming with such intensity that he burst some blood vessels or something of
Oh
that
yeah,
sort. So
I
it's
definitely would think
imaginable.
that.
Thinking about characters, and you mentioned before that you like sometimes to kind of play with characters in your songwriting. Do you feel like when you look back on the different bands that you've been involved in, the different songs you've been writing, do you have some kind of particular kind of lyrical um, wells that you like to go back to? Do you have kind of like particular themes or particular topics that you tend to find kind of um, fertile for making songs out of?
God, that's a really good question because I can't think of what it is. Usually it's a phrase that I'll write down. Um,
And
It's
then kind of
so
like
much,
something can sort
so
of
much of that
come out of that.
songwriting stuff is trying to fit the syllables in with the riffs. It's such a puzzle,
Mm,
and it's not. It almost in that fitting of the syllables and the words and the sound of the words. It almost starts to take on a life of its own. Like I usually will not say this expresses my frustration at having a job or this is
yeah,
the pain of losing. Although, yeah, I do that. I don't know. And again, I don't want to sound kind of like typical, like, oh, it's just a cathartic way of releasing grief or something. But yeah, everybody's got grief.
mm,
So, and death is the most dramatic thing there is. So those are
yeah,
always easy go to, but there's stuff recently that's definitely not. not related to grief, definitely related to um, times in my life, but I'd like to conceal it enough and make it you know, cloaked enough
Yeah,
to be poetic and not literal. That's my biggest fear, is just to be too literal. I can't start off like I'm going to write a song about my hatred of my dad or something, even though a lot of it does come out like
mm,
that, but it just seeps in. But I start with what I think is like a cool line, a cool sounding line, and how it might fit in with that pulse I was talking about of a riff or a set of riffs. But I seem to have a knack for that. Like playing guitar and singing, when I had to do that, Lord, I never thought I would be doing that. It was really hard at first, but then something clicked, and I can kind of I can pull it off. I can sort of separate it, uh, separate the rhythms. I can try
yeah,
to sing at a different rhythm than what my hands are doing. But it's quite a like plate spinning feat sometimes. And
definitely.
then it starts to feel like muscle memory, just
Yeah.
like any routine.
I guess like drummers don't want to hear about that difficulty because they're always having to spin multiple plates.
Oh my God, I can't imagine being a singing drummer. Wow. A lot of good ones out there. Holy
Yeah.
cow.
Thinking of your lyrics, there was a line that I think I heard. It'll be funny to see if I've misheard this on Blurred Lines. Um,
Wires.
so, do you know what? Do you know why I did that?
Everybody says blurred lines.
Someone else brought that up in an interview, and it messed with my head because he brought it up, and I was like, "What's Blurred Lines got to do anything?" And it was like, "Oh, he's making that connection." And then I made it halfway through the interview. Excuse me, Blurred
It's
Wires.
happened to me now. It's gotten into my head. Like, where is it? Lines, wires.
Blurred Wires. There is a
Mm-hmm.
song called Regular Multiplier, and I
Mm-hmm.
think the line was the pins removed, the dance can start. Did I?
Mm-hmm.
I love that
Yeah.
line. That's great.
Yeah, it is. It that's got a okay. Now there's a song. When it was I didn't intend that to be, but the theme starts to develop, and that was it took on to me, and you can interpret however you like, a sort of let's celebrate after the Armageddon, the
Mm,
apocalypse, and let's not necessarily celebrate, but there's some sort of liberation
yep.
after an apocalyptic disaster. I don't know. That's the feeling I get. That's what I meant. You know, let's clear the streets. Let's just have a party in the midst of all this decay and damage.
And I think that's kind of a good characterization of the album in general because there is that dark apocalyptic side to it, but there is also that sense of fun, like that you can have the
Hmm.
two things together.
You can party in the post-nuclear disasters. God, or something. I don't know.
Indeed.
Sounds stupid.
Now I wanted to ask you, yeah, it seems that in between Sicbay and Upright Forms that you then did have a break from being in bands, having decided after Dazzling Killmen that you might want to have a break. It seems like you did. Was that kind of a conscious decision of you didn't want to be in a band for a while, or just other
Well,
life events took over?
you're forgetting one band called Xaddax that I did have between Sicbay and Upright Forms. I had the band Xaddax with my then wife. I moved to New York in 2009 to be with her, and we started Xaddax when I lived in New York, and we toured Europe. We have an album, a couple of singles, um, and I don't, you know, more power to the people that can be in relationships and marriages and just be a two-piece band like that. I know there are some that do it. It just didn't, our relationship basically fell apart and there goes the band too. So, um, I still wanted to be, I still wanted to do music and I moved back from New York to Minneapolis and, again, I had that kind of that pause of like, ah, I can't do this anymore. And then I got the bug and I just started to talk to people. It's like I've likened it to have, I don't know, musical mu band feet. Like my body just goes and starts doing it without any real conscious decision of like, I am going to do this. I just, hey, we should get together and start playing. And I just get the itch. And
Mm.
that's what happened. And so I never really have stopped for very long. Uh, every time I say, that's it, I'm done, 2 months later, there it goes again or something. It never, and it's funny, like I just gave up on that. It's like, I'm never going to say that again. I'm not going to say I'll do this until the day I die, but I can't imagine my life without making music with other people. I like
Mm-mm.
that. So it's definitely become a part of me and it still feels new. I mean, I guess because I started so late, I still have like a little bit of imposter syndrome. Like, why is Tom Osmond talking to me? It's just or whoever is like, I don't my career. What? I've had a career, my long career. What the hell are you talking about? It just sounds so bizarre. And I still feel slightly like, I don't know, shy about it, I guess.
Well, I appreciate that, you know. I have much less to my name, and I definitely feel when people say they'll talk to him, just like, oh, it's
Oh,
nice that someone wants to talk to me.
well, um, I enjoy your podcast quite a lot, and I've listened to a lot of your interviews, and I thought you have a real knack for like we're just you don't seem to have definite pre-thought out questions. You're just sort of riffing along, and I like that. And I really appreciate you doing this.
I'm glad. I try and find a bit of a balance there.
Yeah.
Thinking of past episodes, so I noticed that Blurred Wires was mastered by Todd Rittman, right?
hmm Oh yeah.
And I feel like I'm circling my neck because I'd like to talk to Todd Rittman one day. And he's popped up before because I think he maybe produced or was involved with the Lovely Little Girls album.
hmm
And I interviewed Gregory Jacobson.
hmm
And I think, yeah, I'm intrigued by Todd Rittman because I really like Dead Rider and I really like Sheer
Oh yeah,
Accident as well.
definitely.
Um, had you worked with him before?
Not really worked with Todd. No. I've known Todd, gosh, since 1990 when Dazzling Killmen played a show with his then band called the Mercury Players. This is before US Maple.
Mm.
And that was in Madison, Wisconsin. And I've known him, what is that? 24 years now? Wow,
Just lost a
34,
decade, that's all.
dude. Yeah. To me, the year 2000 is like 10 years ago. Like I'm still like that. Like what year is
Yeah,
it? It's
I get that. I
once
totally
it
get
hit
that.
2000, my sense of time went out the window.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I have not, but we're pretty good friends, and I hope that we can play with Dead Rider. He they don't do a whole lot of live stuff these days, but
Mm. And
yeah.
you know, I get the impression when it comes to mastering records, it's like a lot of the time that's sent out. Were you actually doing that with him, or was it just you had the album finished and recorded and
Yep,
you sent it off to him?
we did. We just sent it to him, and he didn't do. I mean, it's not drastically different. It's better, but it isn't. You know, a lot of that stuff is like making sure the levels are and EQ is okay for whatever format it's going to be
Yeah.
in. And the vinyl sounds great. Uh, it sounds the same as streaming, and it sounds the same as the CD. So cool. Yeah, I don't really know what mastering is.
Me
I
neither.
know
I
people,
get the
I know
impression that
people
it's kind
do
of
it.
like a,
I have
it's like
no
a sort of
clue.
subtle, like a sort of subtle art, like it doesn't really stand out, but, and yet it does make a difference.
I have had one bad experience with it where the person I will not name the name really made it a record I was a part of sound bizarre, and we had to sadly reject it. And it was very awkward. I didn't know you could make it sound so strange. But yeah, you can.
I guess that's a
And
useful insight to know. You know how it badly it could go. Like,
it
oh, this
could
is
go
actually,
badly. It can go really wrong. I really love how well it went for Face of Collapse. That album remastered sounds way better than it did back then. I don't know, like back in the 90s, I don't know who mastered it. We had no idea what that was. I still don't know who did it back then. Somebody at the pressing plant, we thought. And now it's just taken on this whole, you know, new thing. Or back then it was just an afterthought. Like, oh, and
hmm.
but boy, that yeah, very very good job on that one. But yeah, it can go sideways.
You mentioned about different formats, vinyl versus CD, streaming, etc. What's your personal kind of feeling or preference when it comes to different formats of music?
I'm probably in the minority in our little world, but I just stream stuff. I have some albums. I have a turntable. I used to have a lot of vinyl. I don't anymore because I moved so much and like this
Mm.
is just not working. And once everything's on here and I can't resist. It's like it's a miracle, you know? It's just like
It's the
I
Swiss
don't
Army knife of
know.
the digital age.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm an old timer, but I don't really care about vinyl very much. I know that sounds
You're
like
allowed to. You don't have to
I'm not that
love
into
it.
it. Not that into it. I bought a turntable specifically to listen to the Upright Forms album. And I bought some albums. I went to a record store and went, wow, look at me. I'm in a record store. First time in 20 years shopping for a record. And I immediately noticed $25, $30. What the hell? And I'm like, ay, ay, ay. And I bought a couple of, I think I bought like a Talking Heads album and oh God, Tommy, The Who. I bought
Mm.
it because I had that one when I was growing up. And, but I don't think I put on a record other than my own test pressing to check it out to see how it sounded. Other than that, I never listened to vinyl. And also very unpopular, apparently, thing to say is I use Spotify all the time, which I guess is the devil. I don't know. I look at it as I do research on it, so I don't know.
Yeah. So, sort of drawing things to a close, then thinking about the record and thinking about what the band's doing in general. What's kind of the best way for people to keep up to date with the band?
Well, I like to think that I put everything on uprightforms.com, all the links, all the shows that we have coming up, how to buy something we have, or Bandcamp. We
Yeah.
have merch on there.
And I did
Bandcamp's
I
probably the best way.
Yeah. Do you actually have a web store on the Upright Forms website, or you've got a link to
No,
Bandcamp?
no, just
Yeah.
basically a link to Bandcamp. I think you have to pay more for having a store on this website. It was amazingly easy to make this thing. There's and I'll give them a shout out. There's a company called Banzoozle or I think it's
I
called
think it's
Banzo.
Bandoozle. I've used them as well. Yeah, it is easy.
Yeah, Banzoozle. I mean, I had a website. God, this sounds like a commercial, but I had some photos of us and I had it up in like 2 hours. Like, wow, there's the website and they have all these kind of cool fonts you can use and themes. Like, and they're I was pretty shocked. It costs like 12 or $15 a month. I don't
Yeah.
know. That didn't happen back in the 90s, that's for sure.
Yeah, if I had to do coding, there would be absolutely no possibility of anything
Oh
ever
my
getting made.
God. I
And
tried. I tried.
and shows, do you have any shows coming up?
Yes. Yeah, we're getting out and playing the world. We're playing locally here in Minneapolis, a really great venue called Cloudland. And on October 10th and October 11th, we're playing Mickey's Tavern in Madison, Wisconsin. October 12th, we're playing a bar called Promises with a band called If I Had a Hi-Fi and Power Wagon. And in November, we're playing Chicago at the Burlington Bar with Cougars and Tornavalanche. And that's on November 15th. And November 16th, we're playing in Iowa City at Gabe's with Tornavalanche and Cougars as well. And couple of a local show on December 19th. This kind of a four band holiday party at 7th Street Entry on December 19th. So wow, it sounds like we're really busy, but that's all we have for the next 3 months. Not really that much.
Cool. Well, yes,
Yeah.
as I say, it's all up on the website as well. So
All of it.
and
Yeah.
it's uprightforms.com, is that right?
Yep. That is it.
So
There was no other upright forms that got the name.
that's good. You managed to get that lucrative.com address.
hmm
So yeah, Blurred Wires is out. People can listen to it on Spotify and you won't be offended. They can buy it from Bandcamp. They can buy it from the great SKiN GRAFT Records. Nick, it was great to talk to you. Thank you so much for your
Oh,
time.
thank you so much, Tom. Those some great questions, and it was a true honor.
Thank you
So
very much.
have a good day.
You too. Ciao.
The pins removed. The dance can start. Clear the streets. Let's sweep the